The Lynching of Sam Smith, December 15th, 1924. Eugene stood by the car, lifting the hood. His nephew, Sam, got in and the engine let out a growl when he turned the key. They leaned in closer, listening. "You think it'll hold up, Uncle Gene?" Sam leaned on the passenger door. He had a folded cloth in one hand, wiping dirt from his palms. "I sure hope so. It ain't got no choice." After tightening something under the hood, Eugene straightened up, the orange from the sun reflecting onto his face. "Been running this old Tin Lizzie longer than I've been running fences, and even longer than you've been running from work." Sam chuckled. "Maybe you'll get a new one for Christmas, Uncle Gene." Eugene looked up. "Oh, that show is right. It'll be here in a couple of weeks. Seemed like just yesterday I was holding you up in my arms."
Now look at you.
15.
You're about to be grown as me in a few years. You know what you want yet?
"I ain't sure yet, Uncle, but I know Mama working on a sweater, but it might be for Daddy. Daddy say he might get me a boomstick. I told him I want one like yours, so I can help Daddy with shooting the rabbits."
Long as you hide it. Don't want them whites catching you with no gun.
"Probably best to wait till you get older." "I ain't worried by no whites, Uncle. If they try to take it, then I'll just shoot them too." "Don't be foolish, boy."
Sister Sarah and James ain't gonna be able to do nothing you get caught. And me neither.
He closed the hood with a thud. "Now go on and get in." Sam climbed into the car, the seat creaking as he settled. Eugene turned the key, and the engine sputtered before catching. He gave the dashboard a quick pat. "See, she ain't quitting on us yet." They rolled onto the road, kicking up dust as they left the farm behind. The fields stretched on each side while the trees rustled. The route narrowed as they drove, bumping along the way. The car jolted, and Eugene tightened his grip on the wheel.
You sure we gonna make it, Uncle Gene?
He nodded. "Done it 100 times.
We'll be in Nashville by 2 if we lucky."
Sam turned away, leaning back and shut his eyes. Earlier that day, in Nolensville, the bell above the door jingled as a man stepped into a store, clutching a folded newspaper under his arm. The grocer, Ike Eastwood, stood behind the counter, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his apron. "You see this?" The customer tapped the front page with 2 fingers. "Says here more of 'em are settling in Nashville. Over 100 just this month." Ike leaned forward. "That's a damn shame. By next month it'll be 1,000. They're like weeds. You let one in, next thing you know, the whole damn state's gone to hell." "Now that's the truth, Ike. Makes me sick. Worked all my life for this land, grew up here, and they think they can just come in, taking jobs and everything else." The man leaned forward, glancing around before continuing.
"Should've won that damn war, I tell you that. My granddaddy died fighting them monkeys." Ike spit into the dirt. "Long as they don't make their way down here, Nolensville got their own way of doing things."
The man pursed his lips, shaking his head. "They'll be stupid to. But then again, they ain't the smartest. I got something for 'em if they do."
Ike gave a short laugh.
"You and me both, brother. Let 'em try. We ain't got no room for their kind. Folks here ain't like them uppity city folks." The man took a deep inhale and tucked the newspaper back under his arm. "You right about that." Roy followed the man outside, and they stood in front of the store, observing the town. The man adjusted his hat and stepped off the porch. "Well, I'll see you, Ike. Oh, and Caroline wanted me to thank you for the flour. You can tell her I said she's welcome, and don't forget we having a sale coming up next week." "Will do." Ike waved him off and watched as he walked to his truck and drove away. He lingered by the door, his eyes scanning the quiet street. The porch creaked as he shifted his weight. Eugene drove down the dark highway as the bright stars glittered above. The car rattled as it hit another bump, Sam shifted in his seat, his hand gripping the door handle. At least the lights work, he thought. Wasn't too long ago we wasn't even able to drive. The vehicle interrupted his thoughts as the car jerked and shuddered. Sam opened his eyes, sat up, and looked over. "You hear that, Uncle Gene?" "Mm-hmm. Old Betsy losing steam." They made it about a mile further before hearing a sputter, then a loud pop. The car lurched forward before slowing to a crawl. Eugene cursed under his breath and pulled over. He shut off the engine and leaned back in his seat before looking at his nephew and getting out. Sam got out as well, and upon opening the hood, a rush of smoke greeted them, causing them to back up. Eugene took a deep breath. "Well, that's it. We need some help. Might be the spark plugs." Sam looked out at the road ahead. "I see some lights, Uncle. Where we at?" "That's Nolansville. Ain't no good place to be black." "Uncle, you sure we can't fix it?" Eugene shook his head before placing a hand on his chin. He looked out towards the town's scattered lights. "I think I'ma have to go on out there." "You think anybody's still awake?" "Only one way to find out." He closed the hood and turned to Sam. "You stay on here. Keep the doors locked and don't talk to nobody. Can I get your gun if I need it?" "You ain't gonna need it, 'cause ain't nothing gonna happen. I'll be back soon as I find someone. Just stay here." Sam let out a sigh. "I will, Uncle." He climbed back into the car, closing the door behind him. Eugene adjusted his cap and began his walk. Aside from the gravel under Eugene's boots, the night was quiet. Sam watched until the shadows swallowed him whole. Eugene shivered, tucking his hands in his pockets as he walked. A street lamp ahead cut through the darkness. Passing it and once further into town, he saw a home next to a store with a light on and approached. He hesitated for a moment before stepping onto the wooden steps. He rapped his knuckles against the frame of the screen door. After a few minutes, still no one answered. He hung his head and turned before going to look elsewhere. He heard voices coming from the opposite side of the road. Maybe they could help. After a few steps, someone called behind him. "Hey, who's outside?" Eugene, almost falling back, turned around to see Ike, the grocer, holding a rifle. I sure is sorry, mister. My name Eugene in our car. What the hell you want, boy?" Ike raised his gun and walked toward him. "I don't want no trouble, sir. It's just my car broke down on the road and was looking for some help." "Well, why the hell you standing next to mine? You stealing, boy?" His eyes narrowed as he looked Eugene up and down. "No, sir, I ain't stealing. Just looking for some help, I swear it, sir." "Help? Won't find no help here. Look to me like you looking to take what ain't yours." Eugene shook his head. "No, sir, I ain't here to cause no trouble. I think we need a spark plug. I got the money, if that—" "I don't give a damn what you need." "You ain't gonna get it here." A dog barked in the distance, and a door creaked open across the street. A man stepped out, and other neighbors began to awake to the commotion. "What's going on, Ike?" the man called out. "Caught this boy snooping around, trying to steal from me. Sir, I promise to you I wasn't snooping. You calling me a liar, boy?" Figures stepped out into the light and lanterns flickered, illuminating the street. A small crowd gathered beside Ike, surrounding Eugene. No, sir, I wouldn't say that." "Well, look like you saying it." "Looks like we done caught a thieving nigger," a bystander said. "Sir, I promise I wasn't." "He's lying," another said. "Probably thought he could sneak off with something." Eugene raised his hands higher. "Mister, please, sir, I ain't lying. Sir, my car done stopped just up the road. I can show you if you want." Ike stepped closer, the barrel of his rifle pointing at Eugene's chest. "I don't want you to show me nothing, boy. I know your kind. Always taking what don't belong to you." The first punch came from the side, catching Eugene off guard. He stumbled, his feet slipping on the gravel. Another man grabbed him by the collar, dragging him into the road. Eugene hit the ground hard, his hands scraping against the dirt, boots connected with his ribs, his back, his legs. He curled up, trying to shield himself from the blows. "You think you can come into our town and steal from us, boy?" a man said. "I wasn't." Boom! Eugene began before a boot to the jaw silenced him. The crowd grew louder. Eugene's vision blurred as the beating continued. Sam sat in the car, looking to the left and right. He thought he heard something, which made him sit up straight. His eyes darted toward the road before they widened. Men were shouting. What was going on? The yells grew, and Sam cracked the door open. After hearing a scream, he hopped out, squinting his eyes. He knew that voice. He went to the back and pulled out his uncle's shotgun. He breathed rapidly as his shoulders rose and fell. Sam furrowed his brow and began to jog toward the town. As he neared the screams, he saw a glow around a building. Approaching, he saw a small crowd. In the center, he got a glimpse of his uncle on the ground, his arms wrapped around his head, his boots and fists beat into his flesh. "You shouldn't have come here, boy," a man yelled. Eugene screamed after a man, bigger than the rest, connected with his abdomen, sending a sharp pain down Eugene's body. He began to black out. Sam gasped. The men were too focused on his uncle to notice him, Ike leading them. He continued down the path, running full speed until reaching them and lifting his uncle's shotgun. "Stop!" The men froze for a moment, turning to look back. "I'll be damned. It's another one," a man said. Their eyes burned and faces snarled. "Let my uncle go." Eugene lifted his head to the familiar voice, slowly opening his eyes. "Sam, no!" Sam ignored him. "Leave my uncle alone. We wasn't doing nothing. We just needed help for the car." "You got some nerve, boy," Ike said. "Oh, we gon' get you good," a man added. "Drop that gun, boy." Sam didn't move. "I ain't dropping nothing. I said we ain't do nothing. We from Nashville. Let my uncle go." "Enough of this," Ike said, lifting his gun and pointing at Sam. The boy's eyes widened and he took a step back. Sam stumbled, the rifle's bullet crashing into his shoulder. The boy let out a yelp and, using his other hand, veered the shotgun in Ike's direction. The other men jumped back. Ike fell over, the hot metal connecting with his stomach. "Run, Sam," Eugene managed to say. Hesitating, he turned and ran as fast as he could. The yells behind him served as motivation, and he galloped down the road, clutching his shoulder. After passing their car, seeing it one last time, Sam set off into the woods. Finding a half-torn-down shed, he nestled between the two walls that did stand. Leaning against one, he slid down to the floor. He felt like he ran a marathon and would have slept had it not been for the pain, the cold, and the worry for his kin. After Sam left, Eugene lay crumpled on the dirt, his breath shallow and uneven. The world around him blurred, a haze of flickering lanterns and moving shadows. Blood pooled beneath his face, mixing with the dust. A few men tried to beat him back into consciousness, but failed, frustrated. "What do we do now?" someone asked, wiping the red of his hands on his pants. Ike lay on the ground, clutching his stomach, clenching his jaw tight while being tended to by some of the men. "Someone get Briley," he said. Ike was taken to the hospital while men guarded Eugene, who hadn't moved. Minutes later, the officials' headlights cut through the darkness toward them. Sheriff Bob Briley stepped out, adjusting his belt as he looked at the scene. "What the hell's going on here?" he barked. Boy over there got caught stealing, Sheriff, a man replied. Briley looked over to the heap of red human flesh on the ground. Had a friend with him. Shot Ike, then Ike shot him, but he got away. Is Ike all right? Where's he at now? Took him up to the hospital. Got him in the stomach, but don't look too bad. Briley nodded before walking over and crouching down to inspect Eugene. He grabbed his chin, tilting his head up to get a better look. Can you talk, boy? Eugene's eyes fluttered open and lips moved, but no words came. The sheriff stood, dusting off his knees. All right, y'all go on and get him up. Two men stepped forward, grabbing Eugene by the arms and dragging him to his feet. He's coming with me, Briley said. Throw him in the back. What about the other boy? Someone called out. Briley turned to the group. We'll find him. Put the word out. I reckon he most likely hiding close by if he been hit. We'll catch him. The men grumbled as the others hoisted Eugene into the back of the sheriff's car and threw him across the seat. After tossing him in a cell at the jail, Briley left. The hospital room's door opened. Ike and the nurse looked up as Briley barged in, stopping at his bedside. "'Bout time you got here, Bob," Ike said. "I was beginning to worry them boys got you too." The sheriff laughed. "Well, at least you still got your sense of humor. Tell me what happened. Heard they was trying to steal from you." Ike tried to sit up before his head fell back to the pillow. Briley looked at the nurse. "He gonna be all right?" "I've seen worse, Sheriff, but he should pull through," she said. "Caught him trying to steal from me," Ike said. "Boy came out of nowhere and shot me before running off. Said they was looking for spark plugs." Briley nodded. "Yeah, we're looking for him right on. Did you get a good look at him?" Ike looked up at Briley and squinted his eyes. "Come on, Bob. You know I can't see no niggas running round in the dark. Might as well be invisible." The nurse chuckled. "All right, well, let me go on look. I'll let you know when we get 'em." "Thank you, Sheriff." Ike groaned as he watched Briley walk out and close the door behind him. Sam woke up that morning to the heat of the sun, surprised he fell asleep. He felt like he swallowed fire. He pushed himself off the ground, wobbling along the way. His shoulder ached as he walked, each step heavier than the last. After a few moments, he saw a man getting water from a well. Setting his weapon aside, hiding it underneath some brush, he approached. The man, Bert Cochran, turned around. "Who the hell are you, boy?" He drew his pistol, pointing it at Sam. "I'm sorry, sir. I just wanted to ask if I can have a little bit of water, sir," Sam said. He took a step forward and Bert did the same. "Stop right there, nigga." His eyes drifted to Sam's shoulder before widening. "Why you bleeding, boy?" Sam froze. "Please, sir, can I just get some what? You're that boy they're looking for, ain't you? The one that shot my neighbor." Sam shook his head. "No, sir, I don't move. You so much as breathe too fast, I'm leaving watermelon barbecue all over the grass." Bert walked toward him. "Get on your knees, boy," he said. Sam curled his fists. Bert, now feet from him, shoved the pistol against his forehead. "I ain't repeating." Sam's hands relaxed and he dropped to the ground. Bert stood above and called toward his house. "Margie, send someone to fetch the sheriff. I've got him here, the boy from last night." Minutes later, Briley, along with several members of the search party, arrived. The sheriff jumped out of the car with his own pistol, stopping at the two. "Caught him out here," Bert said, "asking for water." "Good work, Bert," Briley said. The sheriff crouched down, inspecting the boy. "You caused a lot of trouble, boy. You don't do that in my town." "Sir, I was just looking for some water." You was just looking for some water, like y'all was just looking for some car parts last night. How your arm get like that?" He poked the wound with his barrel, making Sam flinch. Sam's eyes darted. "I was just trying to save my uncle from some people that was beating him, sir. I ain't mean nothing, sir. I just wanted to help my uncle." Briley stood above him. "Well, don't look like your uncle doing too good, and you better hope the man you shot lives." The sheriff motioned to two of his deputies who had just arrived. As they grabbed him by the arms, yanking them up, he moaned. "Take him to the hospital and watch him," Briley said. The men threw Sam in their car and hauled him off. Briley turned to Bert. "All right, I'll take it from here. Thanks for finding him." Bert nodded. "I just hope there ain't more of 'em coming, Bob. Can't believe I caught him. Ike's one of my good friends." "I'll make sure they see the law," Briley said. "You know where his gun's at?" "Gun?" "Yeah, said he shot Ike with a shotgun." "No, he ain't have nothing when I found him." "Well, either way, he got charges coming, attempted murder and carrying, getting the older one with robbery, though I don't even think he'll make it." "He at the hospital too, Sheriff?" "No, he in the jail. Doctor there checking up on him." While a deputy tossed Sam onto a bed down in the basement of a Nashville hospital, Eugene lay unconscious in his cell. Outside the saloon in Nolensville, late that Saturday evening, a group of men met. "Quiet down," a man said. Everyone in the community knew and respected him. The man approached the center of the group where he stood. "We've got something to settle." The men fell silent and looked. "You all know what happened," he began. "Them boys thought they could come into Nolensville, take what wasn't theirs, and get away with it. Ain't been right ever since they been free," someone said. The leader continued. "Coming here and shooting a white man, one of us, just don't sit right with me." "Sure don't," someone said. "What are you thinking?" someone asked. "One of them already locked up and one's in the hospital." "This country getting too soft," another said. "This ain't the North. Boys sitting up in that hospital probably being fed better than us." "We've got to send a message," the leader said. "If we don't, they'll just keep coming, thinking they can do whatever they please to whoever they want." The crowd murmured again. "Everyone quiet. Now listen, we need to do what needs to be done." A hush fell over them before they began to nod. Hours later, they shook hands, retiring to their homes for the night. During the same time, Sam lay still on the hospital bed, staring at the cracked ceiling above him. His shoulder throbbed, the stained bandages were bound around him, and his wrists ached from the handcuffs chaining him to the metal frame. A nurse passed by his room and peeked in. Sam lifted his head slightly, his voice hoarse. "Ma'am, please, can I get some water, please?" She said nothing before continuing down the hall. The sound of her shoes echoed and faded into the distance. Sam sank back onto the thin mattress, shivering while he wondered about his uncle. Hours passed as he twisted and turned. He looked up upon hearing footsteps approach. Another nurse stepped in, carrying a clipboard. "Excuse me, ma'am. Can you tell me if my uncle all right?" She ignored him, making a note on the chart hanging at the foot of the bed. "Ma'am?" She flipped the chart closed and left the room, the door clicking shut behind her. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes, a tear cascading down his cheek. Upstairs, Dr. Larry Hardman stood at the nurse's station, flipping through a chart. "What's the update on the boy?" he asked without looking up. Another nurse, Amy Weigel, shifted in her seat. "Well, I just got in, but they tell me he's awake. Looks like he'll make it, Dr. Hardman." The doctor nodded, still scanning the papers. Weagle inhaled before standing. Sir, may I ask you a question?" He paused, looking up. "Yes?" "I'm concerned about tonight. A few of the nurses say there might be some trouble." "Trouble?" "Yes, doctor. I'm just worried." He put a hand on her shoulder. "Nurse Weagle, there is no need to worry. That commotion with the boy happened an hour south of here. Now, everything will be fine. I'll be here tonight and tomorrow, just in case." The nurse smiled as the doctor left. About 30 minutes later, Sam adjusted the metal on his wrists for the 100th time. The ones on his feet scraped against the metal bed frame as he tried to stretch. The door creaked. Sam looked toward it to see Weagle, with a glass of water, step inside. She closed the door without a sound before she moved to his bedside. "Water?" she said, holding a glass in her hand. Sam's eyes widened and his lips parted. He nodded, struggling to lift up. "Yes, ma'am, please." She lowered the glass toward him. "Here," she said. She pressed the cool rim against his cracked lips. He felt the fluid rejuvenate his body, gulp by gulp, letting the water dribble down his chin as he tried to swallow without gasping. When done, Amy pulled the glass away, setting it back on the tray. "How you doing?" "I'm Nurse Weagle." Sam exhaled. "Thank you again, ma'am. My name's Sam. I sure appreciate it." "You hungry?" she asked. Weagle reached in her pocket, pulling out a boiled egg. He couldn't believe it. "You gonna eat it, or just look at it?" she asked. "Oh, yes, ma'am," he said. Sam held out his hand and she gave it to him, but within 5 seconds he ate it. A crease formed between her eyebrows. "When was the last time you ate?" Sam looked up for a moment before back to her. "Yesterday morning, ma'am, before we left." She drew back. "No one's given you any food?" He shook his head. Her jaw tightened. "Well, I'll see what else I can get you. How your shoulder doing?" "Hurt pretty bad, ma'am." She turned to the door again, as if listening for footsteps, before pulling a small syringe from her pocket. "Here, let me see it." He hesitated before pulling the sheet down. "Now this might hurt a little bit, but it'll help with the pain." He gritted his teeth as her fingers brushed the edges of the dressing. He flinched, nearly jumping up when getting the shot, his first. "All good," she said. After she pulled out the needle, he looked at it, then back at her, rubbing his arm. He'd never been so close to a white woman for so long before. The pain disappeared, and his breath slowed, overcome with relaxation. "Why you helping me?" She took a deep inhale, looking away and back. "Everybody need a little bit of help sometimes. God don't like when we treat each other this way. Now you did something bad, but I believe in the golden rule." Weagle looked down and away. "When I was 7, I remember seeing a black boy, only a little younger than you, got hung right outside my house. Daddy was a preacher, couldn't stop it, and said it was just the way it was. I remember me and Mama opened up the Bible and read some scriptures, but it wasn't no use. I couldn't think about nothing but that little boy hollering and carrying on while they went to town on him. Still can't forget the smell when they burned him. Don't even know what he was in trouble for." Sam's eyebrows furrowed. Weagle looked back at him. "Well, I just knew that wasn't right. No matter what nobody said, I knew people shouldn't treat somebody like that, black or not." Sam didn't know what to say. Amy stood, adjusting the sheet over him. "I gotta go now, but I'll be back in a bit with a blanket and to check up on you. Try to get some sleep." He thanked her as she left, his mind dazed, and closed his heavy eyes. The next day it was Sunday, and in Nolansville, Eugene lay on the wooden cot in the corner of the cell, unresponsive but breathing. The sound of boots echoed down the hallway, growing louder as they approached. Briley, accompanied with the jail doctor, appeared at the bars. Briley looked at Eugene for a moment before opening the doors. The doctor leaned over him, placing the cold metal against his chest. He listened for a moment, then straightened. Cracked ribs, internal bleeding, probably worse. Looks like his head has some serious trauma, too. They really did a number on him. Doubt he'll make it through the week. But he'll make it to see the judge on tomorrow, right? The doctor shrugged. If he doesn't, at least you'll save the state the trouble. Around midnight, Sam lay, thinking of his parents, wondering when they would be told. Had they already been? If so, when would they come? Would they even be let in to see him? He thought of that morning. He could hear the hymns from the chapel and wished to be somewhere he hadn't ever before, in his own church. While his thoughts raced, the hum of engines cut through the still night air as 8 cars, their headlights off, pulled into the hospital parking lot. The men eased their way in, parking on the edge of the lot in the back. Saying nothing, they eased the doors shut, crept around, and to the front. One of the 10 men, handing his gun off to another, knocked after seeing that someone locked the door. A nurse notified Dr. Hardman, and he opened it upon arrival. "Can I help you?" he asked. "We ain't got no quarrel with you. We just want the boy. Let us in," the man said. The other men appeared behind him. "Now, listen. I can't." But before he could finish, the men pushed through, holding him at gunpoint. "Where is he?" one asked. "I won't tell you. It just ain't right." "We ain't got no time for this," the leader said. "Let's go. We can find him ourselves." 2 of the men held Hardman there while they split into groups, boots echoing as they marched through the hospital. Doors swung open and curtains were yanked aside as they searched each room. Nurse Weigel ran to the basement as Sam lay. Locking the door behind her, she ran in. "There are men here." "What?" Sam looked to the door and around, lifting up, pulling the chains. "Listen, everything'll be all right. Now I'ma try to help you. Lay down." She reached for the other blanket at the end of the bed and pulled it over him, making sure it draped low enough to obscure the chains. Outside the room, the sound of boots on the tiled floor grew louder. Weigel grabbed the morphine syringe from her pocket and stuck him with it. "Same thing as earlier," she said. "What do I need that for?" he asked. She looked him in the eyes as the men grew near. "Just in case," she said. The doorknob rattled, then shook violently. Weigel stood frozen for a moment, then approached the door. She turned around, looking at Sam, and put a finger to her mouth. They began kicking the door, and before long, splinters flew into the room. The first man stepped inside, his shotgun sweeping the space. His eyes landed on Sam, then darted to the nurse. "Get out of the way," he said. "No!" she shouted. She took a step toward him. The man lowered his gun as the others entered behind him. "You've got the wrong one. This one's from here in Nashville. The other boy left this." The man passed her lying on the ground while she looked up at them, mouth open. He pulled Sam's blanket back, revealing the chains. The men cut them off with bolt cutters and grabbed him by the hair. He groaned as they pulled him from the bed. Weigel got up. "Let him go." She took a step toward them before another man grabbed her and pushed her into the corner. You better stay out of this, or you're gonna get just what he's about to get." Amy froze, her fists clenched at her sides, tears brimming in her eyes. She could only watch as they hauled Sam down the hallway, his cries echoing behind them. Outside, the cars sped off, headed south. The cars rumbled down the road as they approached Nolansville. In less than an hour, they arrived at a tree across from Ike's store. The crowd, bringing 30 cars with them, gathered, their lanterns casting flickering light. Armed men stood in clusters and drank while women whispered. Below them, children laughed, happy to be up so late. The door opened and 2 men dragged Sam in his pajamas out. The crowd stripped him. Sam screeched and curled as they hit him. He wondered how much more it would have hurt if he hadn't gotten the injection. "Bring him here," the leader said after a few minutes. Everything seemed to tilt and sway as they brought the boy to the tree, blood falling on the leaves beneath. A man stepped forward, uncoiling a thin rope. He tossed one end over a branch and tied a loop at the other. Sam coughed, blood spraying. "Wait, please," he said. The butt of a rifle answered him. A woman in the crowd walked up, spitting on him. "You going to hell, nigga," she said. He struggled as they slipped the noose over his head and tightened it. His knees trembled. After hanging him, the crowd cheered. A group of men stepped forward as he struggled to breathe, shooting him over 100 times. Shortly after his nephew's death, Eugene's followed, dying awaiting trial. No one was ever charged for the crime.